and welcome to another episode of Protein Matters. I'm your host, Shreya, and today we're going to talk about emotional well-being and mental health. I'm pleased to welcome Mrs. Chandrika Iyer. She's an educator and trained counselor specializing in parent coaching and emotional coaching for children and adults. She has advanced training certification in RECBT, Rational Emotive Cognitive Behavior Therapy, from the Albert Ellis Institute, New York, and is trained in CBT, Cognitive Behavior Therapy for Children and Adolescents, from Australia. She's a gold medalist from Bangalore University and has an MA in Curriculum and Teaching from Michigan State University, USA. She also has professional training in the applied use of mindfulness for 12 to 18-year-olds from the British Mindfulness Institute. She has 25 years of experience of teaching, counseling, and contemplative practice in schools and colleges in India, UAE, Oman, and Australia across diverse cultural backgrounds, ethnicities, and communities. Her organization, the Parenting Club, conducts parenting sessions in various communities and coaches children and adolescents in social and emotional learning skills. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Shreya. Thank you for having me.
So a little background on this episode. This episode holds personal significance for me, and I'm sure it resonates with so many other people. Because approximately a year ago, I think during my exams, I started feeling this overwhelming sense of anxiety and nervousness. And with help from my parents, I was able to overcome it. But again, so many people might go through it. So thank you so much for taking time today to speak about this topic.
Anytime.
So just starting off, what are the current trends of prevalent mental health issues among teenagers that you've noticed? Has there been any changes in the patterns of mental health concerns, especially in the aftermath of the pandemic?
Yeah, I think the pandemic was pretty tough on everybody. Parents, children, teachers, schools, colleges across the world. It was very, very difficult because the change came on so rapidly and so suddenly. Nobody really had any time to adjust. And of course, it brought about a whole lot of issues like social isolation, feeling completely overwhelmed, especially because all education especially went completely online. It was new for everybody, and everybody sort of at home, and that was a completely new family situation. So too much change, too rapid, and it did lead to a lot of feelings of anxiety, fear, a sense of social atrophy that came up. But of course, now things are really, really much better. There is no doubt. But I do still see anxiety in terms of social anxiety, academic anxiety. I do still see loneliness. And I think also during the those 1.5 years, all the children's bodies changed, as would happen. But if you were seeing people regularly on a day-to-day basis, you don't really notice these changes. It just happens. It's part of growing up. Nobody's really looking at you. But what happened in those 1.5 years is you were hardly only looking at each other's faces. And I know that a whole lot of the children were not even putting on their videos because they didn't want to actually look at each other's faces. Nobody really sits and looks at your face in a normal setting, right? So that also has brought about a lot of body issues. This suddenly you're so conscious of the kind of changes happening with your body also. So that sort of was there, but I find that it is sort of, it's up the ante now more because of the fact that people didn't really see each other. So there are all these issues, and there's low mood swings, which happen with most teens because your brain is changing. So those kind of, and then social media, I think there was an excessive use of social media during that time. And that has impacted, I think, in a lot of ways, your social skills, because you become more comfortable talking through a screen rather than face to face.
Yeah. I think that's very interesting because the pandemic really has impacted us in so many different spheres and arenas.
Yeah,
So as you know, I sent out an anonymous survey to students from my school and also a few of my
yeah,
friends.
yeah.
And based on those results, these are a few of the observations I found. So most of the factors that students quoted for their anxiety was like lack of choices, uncertainty about the future, academic pressure, and insecurity in terms of their appearance. Are there any specific factors that you have observed that contribute to the mental health issues in this age?
Sorry, I think I lost you there for a bit. Yeah. So there is this rapid changes happening in the brain. So it's a with all the hormones and all the chemical changes. So the brain structure is actually changing. So that does bring about its own kind of confusion, right? Even the person going through it is not aware that why do I feel so sad suddenly? Why do I get upset so easily? So these are the kind of changes that happen normally. It is pretty normal. And then one also needs to understand that children are moving from having like concrete um, operational thinking to formal operational thinking. That is, like you can't say that, oh, you're all 14 years old and you're 15 years old. So all of you have to have the same kind of thought processes, right? So when I say you're moving into formal operational thinking is you learn to think more abstractedly. You are able to look for different alternatives, different perspectives. So and making hypotheses. So you're not only having this kind of tunnel vision. So now all that is happening because your brain is giving you that changes bring about that kind of thinking also, the changes in the thinking. Now, all children don't get to using these kind of skills because basically you need to train your brain to think like that. So a lot of what you're telling me, this anxiety, this stress, fear of loneliness, all of this comes because of the way you're thinking about things. Okay, so you can when we look at it, if we look at it in the terms of through the lens of cognitive behavior, then you could have very maladaptive ways of thinking about something.
Okay.
Let's say you fail an exam, don't do too well. Then if you're thinking about it in a way that is not healthy, okay, if you're going to say, this is who I am, I'm such a failure, I'm such a loser, I'm never going to do better in this subject, oh, I've tried so hard, this is not for me. If you go that route, then obviously you're going to feel stuck, you're going to feel stressed out, and nothing seems to make any sense. So one of the things that one needs to understand is to observe, okay, how am I thinking about this? Can I think differently about this? Now, that part is what I'm saying. When your brain is changing, you can actually input new data.
Okay.
Instead of running your brain with the same old data that you had as a child, because you didn't have that kind of capacity, but now you can.
Yeah.
So you can train your brain, you can change the way you think about things so that you can lessen this amount of anxiety or the stress that you're going through. Yeah, so you got to change how you think about yourself, about your life, about your situation.
Yeah.
So if you're going to, so there are different, lots of these, what we call thinking errors that come up, right? So you can, like, you can awfulize a situation. So I find that in teenagers, this awfulization is pretty rampant. You know, when you think that everything is so awful, you don't do well in a subject, or somebody doesn't talk to you, or um, your boyfriend fights with you, or you don't have a girlfriend, or somebody doesn't talk to you at a party. Everything is sort of magnified.
Yeah.
And awfulized to an extent where you really start self-downing. Okay, I'm no good. I'm always going to be like this. Nobody's going to talk to me.
With the same theme, so when I asked about the main triggers of anxiety, 82% of respondents said it was academic pressure and burdens. Obviously, we cannot escape it because we spend so much time studying in school, etc. And also a little bit of nervousness and butterflies in the stomach is natural. It helps me perform better. But what is that point where it's concerning, where it needs intervention and that we need to look out for?
When it impacts your emotional health and your functioning. So I know I have had clients who just are prepared for the exam, but completely blank out and completely freeze, literally, and are unable to even get out of the car at school.
Yeah.
So they come back home. Literally, they are frozen in their seats in the cars, or they're just blanking out. I had one student many years ago who literally, I'm not even kidding you, she couldn't see anything. She literally went temporarily blind with the stress.
God. Yeah.
So it was that bad. So that is, I mean, that is, of course, an extreme example. But when it starts to impact your functioning, that is when it is really concerning. And that means that you have allowed it to reach that stage.
Yeah.
And the thing to think about about stress is to nip it in the bud. None, like you can't wait till your exam day to decide that, oh, I'm getting extremely stressed.
Yeah.
You can recognize your stress right from early on, which is again coming from what we just discussed, that how are you thinking about what you're doing? How do you think about it? And also, what I come across a lot of the times is this high frustration about not being able to deal with what's in front of you. This generation is like that, isn't it? We are all what I call a fast food generation, because everything is at your fingertips. Like you want everything now.
Mm.
Everything is available in the now, right now. I don't need to wait. So what happens is it kind of creates this necessity to get everything immediately. Like if I study, if I do 3 sums of math, then I have to know math very well. Like I must be able to solve the next 3 also easily.
Definitely.
So this thing that I need, everything must come easily, it creates this frustration. So what happens is the stress is coming partly also because you're not able to handle these frustration levels. So we call it low frustration tolerance.
Yeah.
So you got to learn to up your frustration levels. You got to learn to tolerate frustration. So you got to say, okay, is this something that I want right now? And if I don't get it right now, what am I saying to myself? So again, thinking about the frustration creates its own kind of stress and its own kind of thought patterns. And another thing that I find that really creates stress is you're not able to tolerate distress.
Mm.
Your distress tolerance skills are also low. Your frustration tolerance skills are low. And when all of this happens, you start thinking like that. You start personalizing everything. You start thinking that I'll never be able to do this. I'm never going to get this, even if I try very hard. This is not for me. So and I don't like it. And then another thing is that with this, like I said, this fast food generation that we have, it's like, you have this multiple array to choose from. Oh, if I don't like a burger, it's okay. I can eat sushi. If I don't want sushi, I can eat everything. So it's also easily available. So it's not like that with your subjects. It's not like, oh, I like to do, I like to only study music. I don't like to do science. So this like and dislike, I don't like it. I only want to do what I like. And also this berating the entire education system. I have somebody, one of my clients, who thinks that Andrew Tate has all the answers to education in the world. So berating the system and saying, why do I need to study this subject when I don't like it?
Yeah.
So understanding that there is a reality that at this point in time, you got to accept. So again, this reality acceptance is also something that a lot of students struggle with.
Yeah.
And all of this creates anxiety.
Correct. I definitely relate because as you were speaking, I identified some instances where I would have been frustrated by not getting something, or maybe I would have unconsciously said, "Oh, I don't like this subject." Even my friend, she prepares so well for the exam, but then when she appears for it, there's some switch in her head, maybe, and she's just not able to perform as well as she thought she would. So I think everything that you said was definitely either personally I've experienced, or one of my friends have been through it. So. Yeah, and even in the same lines. So in recent years, we saw many students from well-known educational institutions taking their lives for various reasons, be it maybe not performing well in a competitive exam or not getting a seat in a university. So do you think the fear of failure, or like failure as dictated by everyone else, is one of the main reasons? Because we as students were not able to acknowledge our shortcomings and improve. And how do you suggest we learn to be comfortable with failure?
Yes, failure, I think it's a very cultural thing, how you deal with failure. It depends on how failure has been viewed and talked about in your community, in your families. It's not everybody who's comfortable with failure. It makes us all very uncomfortable. And it's not all of us who can say, oh, failure is first attempt in learning. I wish we could all say that. But reality is that it creates a lot of um, doubts about ourselves, right? Can I do this? Am I even capable of doing this? So the mindset around failure is what needs to change. You need to be able to look at failure really as a catalyst for change, not as a complete full stop to efforts, and not to think that this is so shameful. What will people think of me? So it's also a lot to do with this mind reading. If I fail, what will this person say? What will this person think? So there's that component also. And then there is this fear that I'm going to be this way. I'm going to be labeled a failure.
Yeah.
So there's a sense of very deep shame that comes with not accepting that it's okay that I haven't done as well as I wanted to. Of course, it's disappointing to fail. It is disappointing to accept that it's disappointing, and also to know that I can do better. So this change in mindset is what is required, not just by the individual, but also by everybody around that individual.
Yes.
And not consoling that person in a way that makes them feel like bad.
Yeah.
We don't even know how to talk to a person who's not done too well.
Correct.
Right? So we can't go in there and say, oh, don't worry, it's okay, it's okay. When it's not okay, there's no point in telling a person it's okay.
Correct. Yes.
So you acknowledge that it is painful for them. It's not easy. And at the same time, also helping them see that it is something that could help them look at what they could do better.
Yes.
It to sort of helping them see that it has got no bearing actually on the kind of person they are.
Correct.
Or on their capabilities.
Yeah.
So that is an important aspect of helping somebody cope with failure.
Correct.
But if you start to self-down, if you start to make it shameful, then it can lead to outcomes that you really don't want, isn't it?
Yeah.
And being able to manage your expectations, that's another important thing. You can't set yourself unattainable goals.
Yes.
Let's say you're getting 50%. So I have a client who comes to me. Say, what is your? I want to do well in physics. I'm not doing so well in physics. So I said, so what? When you say I want to do well, what does that mean for you? So I want to get 90 on 100. That's fantastic. That's a great goal to have. And what are you currently at? I'm at a 50. So now how do you expect to go from a 50 to a 90 in one exam in 1 month?
Correct. Yes.
So this is what I mean. You may be ambitious, but you need to temper it with realism, isn't it?
Correct.
So you cannot have unattainable goals. You got to have realistic expectations of your own self and of your own efforts. So all of this contributes to success in the long run.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because like every time maybe I've not performed to my expectations, objectively when I think about it, I'm like, it's okay. I mean, it's obviously not the ideal situation, but I will learn from it. But when you're in that moment, it's so hard to detach yourself from it. And again, I have those self-doubts like, will I be able to do well? I've been putting effort. How's it going to go from here? So I definitely agree with everything that you said.
See,
Yeah.
the thing, what you need to understand here, just to tell you what you just said, talk to you a little bit about that. Logically, like you said, you know that this is not the only exam. You know that. And yet there is an emotional part of you that feels disappointed or that feels let down. And it's very important to pay attention also to that part.
Mm.
You understand?
Yeah.
To be able to validate that part of you which says, yes, I am feeling so disappointed. I put in so much effort and somehow that effort didn't translate into the result that I wanted. And this is hard for me. This is disappointing for me.
Yeah.
Not to push that feeling away.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, then you're not validating what you're going through. It's important to validate.
Correct. Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is another field that we'll speak about now. So technology, social media, we spend so much time on it. And as students, again, all of our coursework, homework, academics is on our electronic devices. So in the survey, when I asked them how many hours per day they spend on electronic devices for non-academic activities, many people said on average 1 to 5 hours. So how does social media technology affect the mental health of teenagers? And any recommendations for managing the screen time and detaching ourselves from social media for our mental well-being?
There are a lot of pros to engaging with social media. The thing is, how do you find a balance? So when you keep engaging with something that's entertaining, your brain sort of wants that entertainment for longer and longer.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to discipline ourselves over something that we enjoy.
Okay. Yes.
You start with one episode of Gilmore Girls, and then you go on to the second, and you go on to the third. So it's hard.
Yes.
So what is the best way? And somebody telling you you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't. You already know you shouldn't.
Yeah.
So how do you stop yourself? So this is where your own discipline matters. So one part of it is to acknowledge that I find this very hard to stop, and probably use some help. Like there are a couple of my clients who are willing to ask for help, saying, I wouldn't mind if my mom or my dad or my sister came and stopped the television or told me, let's, stop this.
Yeah.
So you could ask for help. Especially if you find that you're spending way too much time on social media. Sometimes I ask the clients whether they are okay if they could give their phones away or lock their phones away and give the key somewhere. So if you find that your internal discipline is weak, then you could ask for someone else to help you input that. Because at the end of the day, these are all time wasters after a point. Like you spend 5 hours in the day, 1 hour, I think is quite reasonable, or maybe even a little more. But 5 hours a day when you have a whole lot of other work to do, clearly means that you're engaging with your time, which is definitely not constructive. So in such cases, this person definitely needs to find a balance. And the thing to understand is not allow it to go to an extent where you're spending 5 hours.
Yes.
The minute you recognize that I am engaging with this platform more than a healthy limit, that's the time to actually put a break.
Yeah. Yes.
And also finding other ways to entertain yourself.
Yeah.
Not just social media. There are and it's so important for your mental and emotional well-being, especially also for brain growth, to do other things, like actually physically do stuff, like play a sport or learn a musical instrument.
Yeah. So the mental health issues, how they're obviously different for this current generation and my parents or the previous generation. And it's still a taboo topic for many parents to talk about. Like, what do you think is the reason behind some parents either dismissing or ignoring their teens from speaking out about some of these things?
I think a few parents are quite willing to recognize that their children are having a hard time. In fact, sometimes parents call me to tell me that they think that their teenager needs some kind of support because they're observing that they're not doing too well. Sometimes some of these behaviors could be just regular teenage kind of behaviors where you're not really, you're changing in terms of your behavior, you're trying to figure out who you are. So there is going to be a bit of a change in the dynamics between you and your parents, which happens. There could be conflict situations. So it's important to know that these things happen, and parents also need to understand that their teenager is going through a few issues of their own, and to be there to tell them that we support you, we can, and we would be willing to support you in whatever way we can. But there are a lot of parents who don't or are unwilling to recognize that their child could be having more than the regular teenage issues. And this is where I feel schools need to offer more support. There has to be some way in which the child, the the young adult can at least be heard, non-judgmentally, be heard, be listened to. And that goes a long way. Just simply being there for someone who's going through a hard time is important. And it's pretty mixed. There are some parents who are willing to do that. There are some parents who find it very, very challenging. And I think a lot of the time students hesitate to go to the school counselor for fear of being labeled, maybe, or for fear of being judged by other students or by the teachers. So one way to do this is to actually teach. I think a few international schools are doing it. But across the curriculum, one needs to help children understand emotions. I think so. One of the things that I would strongly recommend is introducing emotional curriculum, emotional health curriculum in schools. Make it as important as teaching science or liberal arts or any other subject, to make it a part of your everyday conversation, to be able to tell children that you can, even to label emotions.
Yes, yes.
Even to just be able to say, I'm feeling upset, I'm feeling angry about this. Even that is healthy, even that is helpful. So just being able to label emotions and then teaching them skills to manage emotions.
Yeah.
All these, because everybody is going through it, not just one or two people.
Correct.
So if that becomes a part of your daily classroom conversation, and everyone can talk to each other about it openly, that would be a day where there would be no such stigma or taboo.
Yes. Correct.
Right?
So being emotionally aware is something that we all want support for, and being able to talk freely about my emotions, how I'm feeling, and being able to resolve it with either my peers or with a counselor is something that we're all looking for in school and in the community.
Yeah.
So this is like about me when I feel overwhelmed or stressed, or I'm overthinking about something. I have like these small techniques that'll bring me back to the present and calm down. So one is I either go for a walk with my father, or like I listen to music. And I have this technique. I think it's called the 3-3-3 rule. I like identify three moving objects in the room, identify three sounds, and then I move three body parts of my own. So this helps to ground me and like take a pause and analyze the situation more rationally. And I also have this breathing technique that works for me. So I trace my palm. When I go up, I breathe in, and then when I go down, I breathe out. I do this on both hands. So for 30 seconds, it just calms me down, and I'm able to maybe stop overthinking a bit and look at the situation more clearly. So along those lines, any self-help strategies or coping mechanisms that you would suggest?
I think some of the strategies that you've listed are excellent. Basically, a lot of it is, they are all mindfulness techniques, just to stop the mind from racing ahead with a whole lot of thoughts. One of the, and I like that the ones that you just said. So basically, coming back to the present, which means that stop getting fused with all the thoughts running through your head, and being able to observe these thoughts, not fuse with it, but to just observe it away from you itself, is enough to bring that little bit of space between you and your thoughts. So if you get fused with any thought that is not helpful, not healthy, then you are going to get sucked up with those thoughts. So one way, and you will also notice that it would be more or less the same kind of thoughts repeating over and over again. So one way to do it is to actually journal. That is, when you are overwhelmed and you start overthinking, you can simply write down all the thoughts that run through your head. So it's literally like getting it out of your head and onto paper.
Yes.
And when you keep doing it, you'll recognize that it's more or less similar. It's more or less the same thing over and over again. You'll have some at least 15, 20 thoughts that you keep playing on loop. So one way is to then actively change those thoughts. So supposing you have a thought which says, I'll never be able to do this well. I can't get this. So something like that, you can look at it and you can say, if I try, I'm sure I can do better. I don't like this, and yet I can cope with it.
Yes.
I don't have to like it to do it.
Correct.
So you can change it. If it says, I hate this, I don't want to do this.
Yes.
So you can change that thought to, yes, I know I don't like it, and yet I can cope with it.
Yes.
So you can, once you get the thoughts out, you can actually look at the thoughts and also look at the pattern of those thoughts. What kind of thinking errors are going into these thoughts?
Yeah.
What are the thinking errors? Is it personalization? Is it mind reading? Is it awfulization? Is it tunnel vision? Is it black or white thinking? So you can actually look and see, oh, wow, this is how I think.
Yeah.
And then you change that. So you actively put in new thoughts, different ways of thinking for you to help yourself.
Yes.
So that's work. You need to do the work.
Yeah.
It won't happen automatically.
Correct. Yes.
So once you ground yourself and you say, okay, let me just observe what is happening in my mind right now. What am I thinking? And then you write it down. Okay, that's one way. Or you just allow it to just leave you. Like you can just watch it. Like, you know how you watch that ticker tape that comes when you watch the news? At the bottom. So you can just watch it and not fuse with it and then continue to do engage with what you were doing.
Correct. Yes.
Right? And then you can follow like you said, your breathing. You know, what you need to do is so when we look at what happens is when you get stressed, your breathing rate goes up. You start breathing faster. And most of the time, if you're really stressed, you'll notice that you're breathing through your mouth. So first thing is you to close your mouth and breathe through your nostrils, and breathe out through your mouth. And if you're taking a breath in to a count of 4, then your out breath has to be double that count. So basically, what you're doing is when you're stressed, your sympathetic nervous system is activated. So everything goes up, your breathing, your heartbeat, everything is going up. So in order to calm down, you've got to put the brakes. And you can do, and that means you are activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which means you can do it with the breath.
Yes.
So you calm down with the out breath. So your in breath is 4, then your out breath is 8.
Okay. Yes.
And then another technique you can do is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, what 5 things can I see? What 4 things can I touch?
Yeah.
What 3 things can I hear? And what 2 things can I smell?
Yes.
And what 1 thing can I taste? So using all your 5 sense organs, you can come back to the present.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone benefits from these techniques. Everybody. So if you find that you're too agitated, you can't write, you can't do anything, then you just sit for a minute extremely still. Like, you play that game Statue, right? So you just play that game with yourself. Just sit for 1 minute with your feet on the ground. Just sit still. Okay? And even that can be quite helpful.
Yes, definitely.
Okay?
And so many of these techniques, I mean, I know so many of my friends who are anxious, but they don't know what to do about it. They don't know how to let it out. And I think these will help a lot of them. And journaling is something I haven't started yet, but it's such an important tool. So I would love to start doing that too. Uh, so this question, we're actually at the end of the interview, but this question I asked to all my guests:
Say
what
that.
advice would you give to your teenage self?
What advice would I give to my teenage self? Um, Not to take myself too seriously.
Yeah.
And not, I think when teenage, you get too caught up with what other people are thinking about you. How much ever you try not to, it's there. um, as you grow older, it's less. I'm not saying it disappears, but
Yeah.
it's less. But when you're a teenager, it's even more, right? You're constantly looking at someone else and wondering why you're not like them, or how you could become like them, things like that. So this comparison, I think I would tell my teenage self not to engage with so much, to have a little more faith in myself, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for today's conversation. Like I said before, it resonates with so many people, and thank you so much for taking time to talk to me today. I'm sure all of these pointers and tips that you gave will be used by everybody. And Happy New Year to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shreya. Thank you for having me. And it's really amazing that youngsters like you are doing such podcasts. More power to you. And yes, all the best to you, and happy New Year to you too.
Thank you. And thank you for anybody who's tuning in to the episode. There'll be more episodes in the upcoming year, but I wish everyone a happy new year filled with joy and laughter. And thank you for listening.